I am Sergeant Aubrey Spears, 42 years old, United States Army. At 15:42 on a Tuesday at Inova Alexandria Hospital, my mother-in-law, Holly, passed away. I had been on watch for 72 straight hours. I was the only one there. After the doctor made the confirmation, I called my husband, Travis. His voice came through the line, devoid of any emotion. 15:42, okay, got it. Listen, on your way home, can you swing by the dry cleaners and pick up my suit? I've got that fundraiser tonight. I went numb. It felt like a cold bullet had just lodged in my chest. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't ask how his mother went. He asked about dry cleaning. Travis thought his mother's death was just an inconvenience. He had no idea that Holly had left me one final order, a mission that would change everything. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And please hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever been treated like you were invisible by the very people you love the most, right when you needed them the most. The final continuous beep of the heart monitor was the only sound in the room. It cut through the sterile quiet of the Inova Alexandria Hospital ICU. 15:42, time of death. I stood at parade rest, my gaze fixed on the flat green line. I didn't cry. Crying is a luxury you can't afford when you're on duty. And for 72 hours, I had been on watch. The door hissed open, and Brenda, the night nurse with a kind face and a soft Irish accent, came in. She gently placed her hand on my shoulder. "You've been here the whole time, Sergeant," she said, her voice thick with a sympathy I couldn't allow myself to feel. I called them, multiple times." She looked away, frustrated. "Some people, they just don't know how to face it, you know." I gave a short, sharp nod. But in my head, a cold, hard thought took shape. This isn't not knowing how to face it. This is a tactical choice. They went AWOL. They deserted their post. I looked down at Holly's hand, already cooling on the white sheets. A wave of profound, heavy injustice settled over me. Holly Walsh deserved more than this. She was a sharp, intelligent woman who had built a life. She deserved to have her children holding her hand. As I walked down the hall, I could hear a family in another room, sobbing openly, the sounds of a shared, chaotic grief. My vigil had been silent, disciplined, and utterly, completely alone. I returned to the room, took a deep breath, and did what needed to be done. I gently reached out and closed Holly's eyes. It was a final act of dignity, a final show of respect. The act her son should have performed. I stepped back out into the hallway, the smell of antiseptic and floor wax stinging my nostrils. I pulled out my phone and dialed Travis. My training kicked in. I had a report to make, a situation to update. I'd even prepared the words, the ones you're supposed to say. "Travis, Mom passed peacefully." He picked up before the second ring. "Aubrey, are you done there?" The question hung in the air, sterile as the hallway I was standing in. "Done?" I asked, my voice flat. "Yeah, you know. With Mom," he said, the sound of traffic in the background. "Is it done? I'm stuck in traffic." I took a sharp, steadying breath. "Holly passed away at 15:42, Travis." There were 2 seconds of silence, just long enough for a flicker of hope that he might feel something. Then, 15:42, okay, got it. Listen, on your way home, can you swing by the dry cleaners and pick up my suit? I've got that fundraiser tonight. The words hit me with physical force. It felt like a cold bullet had just lodged in my chest. Not the hot sting of betrayal, but the numb, heavy shock of impact. My 42-year-old husband, a man who worked in finance, a man I had loved for 15 years, was equating the death of his mother with an errand. "Travis," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "Did you hear me? Your mother just died." "I heard you, Aubrey. I heard you," he said, his voice laced with that familiar, impatient sigh. "But I can't go to this thing in a wrinkled suit, can I? It's an important event. Just handle things there." "You're good at that." "I'll be home later." He hung up. I stood there, phone in my hand, staring at the beige hospital wall. I felt the anger rising, not hot and fast, but a cold, hard burn, the kind that settles deep. Before I could even process the rage, I heard my name. Sergeant Spears. It was Brenda, the nurse. She was holding a thick, cream-colored envelope. This, Mrs. Walsh was very specific. She told me to give this only to you, and only after she was gone. She handed it to me. It was heavy, expensive cardstock. It was sealed on the back with a dark blue wax stamp. My name was written on the front in Holly's sharp, intelligent, and unmistakable handwriting. Sergeant Aubrey Spears. This wasn't a letter. This was an order. A jolt, like a low-voltage current, ran up my spine. As I stared at the envelope, my phone vibrated in my other hand. I looked down. The caller ID read, Stella. I answered it. Hello, Stella. Hey, sister-in-law. Her voice chirped, high and stressed. Listen, is she done yet? I'm trying to book a nail appointment for this weekend, and I don't know if I have to block out time for a funeral. It's just such a hassle. Can you find out? I said nothing. I just pressed the end call button. I looked at the phone, then at the envelope. My mission parameters were becoming crystal clear. I didn't open the envelope until I was in the driver's seat of my car in the parking garage. My hands were steady. I broke the wax seal. Inside, there were no sentimental words, no tear-stained goodbyes. There was only a single, old-fashioned brass key and a small, stiff note card. I read the note. It was Holly's handwriting. 47 Willow Lane. They were never my comrades. Now, they will learn what it means to be left behind. 47. Willow Lane. I'd never heard of the address. It wasn't their old family home. It wasn't her high-rise condo in Alexandria. This was a coordinate, a rally point, a classified mission. I gripped the cold brass key in my palm. Just then, my phone rang again. Travis. I let it go to voicemail. It rang immediately back. I answered, putting it on speaker. Aubrey, where are you? His voice was sharp with irritation now. What about my dry cleaning? I looked at the key in my hand. I looked at the note. I started the engine. My voice was calm, clear, and cold. There's been a change of plans, Travis. I hung up. For the first time in 15 years, I didn't feel like his wife. I felt like Holly Walsh's executive officer. And I had just received my orders. I drove through the dark Alexandria rain, not heading to our house, just driving. The windshield wipers beat a frantic, hypnotic rhythm against the glass. 1542. 1542. 1542. Holly's brass key was on the passenger seat. It was old, solid, and real. It glinted every time we passed a streetlight. A key. It struck me as a bitter irony. In 15 years of being married to Travis, in 15 years of being a Walsh, I never really had a key. Not one that mattered. We lived in a stunning 3-story brick row house in Old Town Alexandria, the kind of place tourists take pictures of. But it was never my house. I realized I had never, not once, called it my house. It was always Travis's house or our place. It was the Walsh house. I was just a high-class tenant. I was a sergeant in the U.S. Army, trained in logistics, capable of managing millions of dollars in inventory and moving entire companies across continents. But I was not allowed to pick out a sofa. Oh, they consulted me. Travis and Stella would hold up paint swatches, ask my opinion, and then Stella would laugh her high, tinkling laugh and say, "Oh, Aubrey, that's so practical. No, we need something with more flair." And Travis, my husband, would just smile and side with his sister. I was an outsider, a useful, practical, reliable outsider. And as I sat at a red light, the rain lashing down, I looked at that key and I realized, so was Holly. After Travis's father, Ben, passed away, Travis and Stella had staged a full-blown intervention. They convinced Holly to sell the large family home she had loved, the one she and Ben had built. "It's just too much for you to manage, Mom," Travis had reasoned, all smooth charm. "We're worried about you," Stella had cooed. They moved her into a sleek, sterile, luxury high-rise condo on the waterfront. To make it easier to care for you, they'd claimed. What a lie. I see it now. They cashed in. They liquidated her primary asset and put her in a gilded cage, a holding cell with a great view. They took her home, her power, her independence. Holly Walsh was a soldier, disarmed and detained by her own children. And I was the other prisoner of war. The memories, the ones I'd learned to file away under acceptable losses, began to flood the cabin of the car. Thanksgiving. 2 years ago. It's the one holiday that matters to me. My own family is military, scattered across the globe, so the traditions of home are important. I wanted to bring something of my world, my family, to the Walsh table. I spent the entire morning in our kitchen making my mother's recipe for pumpkin pie, from a real pumpkin, not a can. And I made a huge, steaming bowl of real, buttery, creamy mashed potatoes. I was proud of them. It was a stupid, small thing, but I was proud. When I placed them on the immaculate designer landscape dining table, Stella just stared. She picked up the serving spoon, lifted a small amount of the potatoes, and let it drop back into the bowl. Then, she laughed. That high, sharp laugh that always set my teeth on edge. "Oh my God, Aubrey," she announced to the room. "Did you bring these from the Army mess hall? It looks so dense." Travis laughed too, that easy, supportive chuckle he always reserved for his sister. He walked over and kissed my cheek. "Come on, honey," he whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "At least it's practical." Practical. There was that word again. I felt the blood drain from my face. I looked across the table at Holly. She was the only one who met my eyes. She deliberately reached over, took a large spoonful of the potatoes, and put them on her plate. "It's delicious, Aubrey," she said, her voice clear and firm. But her words were lost. Travis and Stella were already laughing about something else, some inside joke. I stood there, invisible. I spent the rest of the dinner swallowing my tears, watching my pumpkin pie and my dense potatoes sit on the table, untouched. Growing cold. It wasn't just me, I now understood. They treated Holly the same way. But the real wound, the one that still ached, was last year. I was being promoted. After years of relentless work, of long deployments, of evaluations and boards, I was being promoted to Sergeant First Class, E7. It's a huge milestone. It's the backbone of the Army. The promotion ceremony was at Fort Belvoir. It was a formal, beautiful event. I invited my family. My Walsh family. Travis promised he'd be there. He promised. I was in my dress uniform, my shoes shined to a mirror finish, my heart pounding with a mixture of pride and nerves. My commanding officer was about to begin. 30 minutes before the ceremony, my phone buzzed. A text from Travis. "Hey honey, so sorry, can't make it. Stella just decided we have to go furniture shopping for her new condo right now. You know how bad she is with colors. Gotta go with her. Congrats though, really proud." I stood there, in a room full of soldiers and their cheering, weeping, proud families. I heard my name called. I walked onto the stage. I stood at attention as the new rank was pinned on my uniform. I saluted. And as I looked out at the crowd, at the spouses holding up their phones, the kids waving little flags, I saw the 2 seats I had saved in the front row. They were empty. Later that night, a flower delivery came to the house. A massive, beautiful bouquet of white lilies. I assumed they were from Travis, a typical guilt gift. But the card wasn't from him. It was Holly's sharp, elegant handwriting. 5 words. "I am proud of you." I sat on the stairs, still in my uniform, and I held that card until the edges softened. She wasn't even there, but she was the only one who had showed up. Holly had always seen me. And that's when I finally understood the contempt. Travis, the high-flying finance consultant in his $1,000 suits, had always been embarrassed by my career. "It's just a government job, Aubrey," he'd say at his cocktail parties when one of his partners would ask what I did. "She's a cog in the machine, very practical." His favorite line, the one he'd use when we were fighting, was always, "When are you going to retire and get a real job? You know, in the private sector? Do something that actually matters." To him, my world, a world built on honor, duty, service, the soldier's creed, was just a collection of empty words. Clichés. The only things that were real to him were money, status, and what people thought of him at a fundraiser. He spent 15 years telling me my service wasn't a real job. He made me, a sergeant first class in the United States Army, feel small. If you have ever had your hard work, your career, or your passion dismissed as not a real job by someone you were supposed to love, please support this story by hitting like. And tell me in the comments, what is the unreal job you are proud of? I looked at the brass key, still sitting on the passenger seat. The rain was finally letting up. I realized Holly had seen it all. She had watched her own children, Travis and Stella, worship those same empty gods. She knew exactly what they were, and she knew exactly what I was. She had watched them desert their post one by one. And so, Holly Walsh, a brilliant, tired strategist, decided to give her weapon, her legacy, her money, her final order, to the only soldier in the family she knew she could trust to see the mission through. The revelations from the night before, the map of wounds, had solidified my resolve. I didn't go home. I didn't go back to the empty, sterile house in Old Town. I couldn't. It wasn't my home. It was Travis's. And I was no longer his wife. I was an executor. I drove to Fort Belvoir. I still had my small temporary office there, a little cot in the corner for nights when logistics problems were too complex to leave. I slept on that lumpy sofa, not really sleeping, just resting my eyes. Holly's brass key was cold in my hand. At 06 Yar, I was up. I used the communal shower, put my uniform back on, my armor, and walked to my car. The sun was just a gray smear in the Virginia sky. I sat in the driver's seat and pulled out my phone. I opened my GPS and typed in the coordinates Holly had left me. 47 Willow Lane. It wasn't in Alexandria. It wasn't in Arlington or any of the upscale suburbs. The GPS routed me 30 miles west, out past the strip malls and the highways, deep into the rolling green countryside of rural Virginia. I felt a hum in my chest. This was a reconnaissance mission. I was going to an unknown coordinate on a classified order to secure an objective. This, I understood. This was my language. The paved road turned to a gravel one. The gravel road turned into a long, tree-lined dirt driveway, barely visible from the main road. At the end of it, tucked behind two massive weeping willow trees, was a small, blue-shadowed cottage. It looked like it had been there for 100 years. It looked quiet. It looked neglected. But as I got closer, I saw the trim was painted a crisp white. The small flower boxes, though dormant for the winter, were well tended. There was a strange neatness to it. I parked my car, got out, and walked to the front door. The brass key felt heavy in my hand. I slid it into the old lock. It fit. Perfectly. The tumblers clicked with a satisfying, oily thunk. I pushed the door open. The air inside was still and cool. It wasn't abandoned. It was just waiting. It smelled of old paper, cedar, and faint lavender. A thin layer of dust covered everything, but underneath, it was immaculate. This wasn't just a house, it was Holly's real command post. The front room was a library, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves crammed with novels, history books, and gardening guides. In the corner was a comfortable, worn-out armchair and a reading lamp. But it was the walls that made me stop. They were covered in framed photographs. Pictures of Holly and Ben, her late husband, Travis's father, laughing on a beach. A picture of Ben in his old Marine Corps uniform. Pictures of them, young and in love. Pictures of them, old and still in love. These were the photos I had never seen. These were the photos that Travis and Stella had never, not once, hung up in the family house. In their pristine, modern gray and white world, these loving, happy memories had no place. I walked further in. It was a small two-bedroom cottage, but every inch was hers. The kitchen had a chipped porcelain sink and a big, heavy wooden table. The bedroom had a handmade quilt on the bed. I finally understood the truth. The cold, luxury high-rise condo that Travis and Stella had set up for her, that wasn't a home. That was a forward operating base they had forced her into. A gilded cage. A prison. This was her safe haven. This was the place Holly had lived, truly lived, while her children had her under house arrest in Alexandria. This was her real life, a life she had kept secret. A life she had funded, I was beginning to suspect, with the money Travis and Stella thought they were entitled to. As I stood in the middle of the living room, surrounded by the evidence of Holly's real life, my phone buzzed. I looked at the screen. Travis, my training took over. I took a deep breath, compartmentalized the emotional discovery, and answered. What? Aubrey, his voice was high and annoyed. Where are you? I've been calling. What's our joint account password? I felt that cold, hard anger from the hospital return. Why, Travis? I need to transfer some money to Stella, he stammered, and I could practically hear the lie. For, upcoming expenses. You know, for mom, flowers, and stuff. Just give me the password. Flowers and stuff. He hadn't asked about the funeral. He hadn't asked about her body. He was asking for money. No, Travis, I said. My voice was as cold and flat as a steel plate. What? What do you mean, no? He sputtered. That's my money too. It's our money. Stop being so selfish, Aubrey. What the hell is wrong with... I hung up. My hand was shaking, but not from fear. From rage. I immediately opened my banking app on my phone. I navigated to our joint checking account. I didn't even know what I was looking for, just a premonition. And then I saw it. A bright red banner at the top of the screen. Account frozen. Please contact your branch for more information. I clicked for details. Account access restricted at 8:32 a.m. by co-signer Travis Walsh, citing suspected unusual activity. He had done it. He had moved first. While I was at the hospital, while I was driving in the rain, while I was discovering his mother's secret, he had been on the phone with the bank, lying, painting me as the threat. He had cut me off. The breath went out of my lungs. The upcoming expense wasn't for flowers. It was to lock me out. I stood there in that silent house, completely and totally isolated. I was alone at the hospital. I was alone in this fight. And now, I was cut off from every financial resource I had. I looked around the room, the weight of the fight ahead pressing down on me. I was one soldier, with no support, against an entire entrenched enemy. My gaze drifted, and then fell on the desk. It was a small antique writing desk, the only piece of furniture not covered in dust. On it sat a single framed photo of Holly and Ben. And next to the photo was another envelope. This one was different. It was a standard white business envelope. It was sealed. My name wasn't on it. I walked over and picked it up. Written on the front in Holly's familiar, sharp script were 3 lines. For attorney Margaret Keller, to be opened after my death. And below it, a phone number, a DC area code. I stared at the envelope, and a slow, cold smile spread across my face. Travis had frozen my account. He thought he had cut me off. He thought I was alone. Holly hadn't left me alone. She had left me an ally. She had left me a weapon. I took a deep breath. It was time to call my chief of staff. I stood in Holly's secret command post, the business envelope feeling heavy in my hand. My own bank account was frozen. My husband had declared financial war. I was, by every definition, isolated. But Holly had left me a lifeline. My hands were steady as I dialed the DC number. I was a sergeant. I was cut off, but I was not defeated. I just needed my new orders. The phone rang once. A woman answered, her voice so sharp and clear it could have cut glass. Keller. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. This is Sergeant Aubrey Spears, I said, my own voice instinctively straightening up. Sergeant Spears, I've been waiting for your call. The word sent a jolt of pure relief through me. waiting for my call. This wasn't a random lawyer. This was part of a plan. I have an envelope for you, ma'am, from Holly Walsh. I expected as much, the voice said, all business. Holly was a brilliant strategist. I am her executor. We have a briefing scheduled for 09. Tomorrow morning, my office. Bring the envelope and do not open it. She gave me an address in downtown DC, near K Street. Roger that, ma'am, I said. The language was familiar. It was the language of command. And Sergeant, Margaret Keller added, her voice dropping to a cold, precise tone. A piece of tactical advice. Do not speak to your husband. Do not answer his calls. As of this moment, he is not your family. He is the opposition. Understood, ma'am. I hung up. For the first time since 1542, I felt like I could breathe. I had a commander. I had a mission. The next morning, I drove into D.C. and found the office. It was one of those powerful glass and steel buildings where laws and fortunes are made. I walked into the lobby, feeling out of place in my simple, practical clothes. When I got to her office, the receptionist showed me in immediately. Margaret Keller was exactly as I'd pictured. About 65, impeccably dressed, with silver hair pulled back so tightly it looked like a helmet. She was power, personified. But she was not alone. Sitting on the plush leather sofa were two other women, both in their late 60s. They looked normal. They looked like they belonged in a suburban garden, not a high-powered DC law firm. Sergeant Spears, Margaret said. This is Diane and Eleanor. They were Holly's gardening club, and her best friends. Before I could even speak, the one named Eleanor stood up. She was a small woman with kind, watery eyes. She walked right up to me, and without a word, pulled me into a fierce hug. Oh, you poor child, she whispered, her voice cracking. We heard you were the one with her. You sat with her. Thank you. I froze. It was the first human warmth I had felt in. I couldn't remember how long. Diane, the other woman, stood up and pushed a large stainless steel thermos into my hands. It's chicken soup, she said, her voice firm. Real chicken soup. You look like you haven't eaten in days. You have to eat. I looked at the thermos. My husband had frozen my assets. He had asked me to pick up his dry cleaning. He had left his mother to die alone. And these women, these strangers, had brought me soup. That was it. The dam broke. I sat down heavily on the sofa, and to my absolute shame, I started to cry. Not loud sobs, just silent, heavy tears that I couldn't stop. Eleanor sat next to me, patting my back, just letting me cry. They are monsters, child, Diane said, sitting on my other side. They were monsters to her, and they were monsters to you. Margaret Keller sat behind her desk, silent, letting this happen. After a few minutes, I pulled myself together, wiping my face. I'm sorry, I'm a soldier. I shouldn't. You're a human, Eleanor said, and I saw a pin on her jacket. A small gold star. She was a military widow. She understood. Margaret leaned forward. Diane and Eleanor are here as witnesses, Aubrey. They know everything. They were part of Holly's network. Diane snorted. We just called it our Tuesday Garden Club. Holly was so smart. She knew what they were. Did you know they banned her from driving? What? Oh, yes, Eleanor said, her voice sharp with anger. Not because she couldn't drive. She was a better driver than any of them. But because they didn't want her to be an inconvenience. They wanted to control her movements. So, she bought that little cottage, 47 Willow Lane, with her own private inheritance. We would pick her up for garden club and just drive her out there. It was her escape. I thought of the gilded cage condo. Travis always complained he was carrying her, that she was a financial burden. This time Eleanor burst into tears, not quiet ones, angry sobs. That liar, she cried. My grandson, Tom, he was at Virginia Tech. He was going to lose his scholarship, lose his chance. Holly paid his entire senior year tuition, just wrote a check. And you know what she said to me? She made me promise. Eleanor took a ragged breath. She said, Eleanor, don't you dare tell Travis. He'll just say I'm spending his inheritance. I was stunned. The entire narrative of my marriage, of this family, was a lie. Travis and Stella weren't just neglectful. They were actively bleeding her dry while she was the one performing acts of quiet generosity. She loved them, Diane said, her voice soft. But she didn't trust them. She trusted you, honey. She told us that many times. She said, Aubrey is the only one in this whole family who understands what honor means. My throat closed. Honor. The word Travis thought was a joke. Margaret Keller cleared her throat. The room went silent. The emotional part of the briefing was over. Sergeant, she said, your envelope. I handed it to her. She opened it, scanned the single page, and then looked at me. It is exactly as we discussed. It's simple. She put on her glasses. To her son, Travis Walsh, she leaves $1. To her daughter, Stella Walsh, she leaves $1. She paused, then read directly from the will. With my deepest gratitude for teaching me the true value of self-reliance. I let out a shaky breath. Everything else, Margaret continued, all bank accounts, investment funds, stocks, bonds, insurance policies, and the real estate property at 47 Willow Lane. An estimated total of just under $2 million. She leaves, in its entirety, to her daughter-in-law, Sergeant Aubrey Spears. My jaw dropped. I couldn't speak. $2 million. Margaret Keller slid another, smaller envelope across the desk. This one was plain white. My name was on it. This one, the lawyer said, is from Holly to you. She called it your rules of engagement. I opened it. It was Holly's handwriting. It was just 3 sentences. Do not forgive, let them beg, and when they do, smile, turn, and walk away. I looked up at Margaret, my head spinning. The official reading of the will, Margaret Keller said, a cold, thin smile on her face, is scheduled for this Friday. Your presence and the presence of Travis and Stella is mandatory. The days leading to Friday were a masterclass in psychological warfare. I followed Keller's orders. No contact. I didn't go back to the Old Town House. I operated from 47 Willow Lane, forwarding Travis's dozens of calls, furious rants about the frozen account alternating with manipulative messages about us, straight to voicemail. I ignored them all. I was a soldier preparing for an engagement. My only required contact was the mandatory text, as sterile as an after-action report. Per the instructions of Holly Walsh's attorney, Margaret Keller, your mandatory presence is required for the reading of the will. Friday, 10 a.m., her office. Do not be late. Travis's reply was instant. This is a waste of time, Aubrey. Mom had nothing. It's just going to be us fighting over old photos. I have a lunch meeting at noon, so this better be quick. I felt a cold, hard knot of contempt. He wasn't grieving. He was annoyed that his mother's death was an inconvenience in his workday. Stella's reply came an hour later. It was worse. It was a picture message, a screenshot from an old family album of Holly wearing a stunning 3-strand diamond necklace, the kind of heirloom piece that speaks of old money. Underneath, her text read, Just so we're clear, sister-in-law, I'm calling dibs on this. Make sure you don't accidentally lose it before Friday. Dibs. She was calling dibs on her dead mother's diamonds. I deleted the message. I felt nothing but cold, clean-burning rage. I wasn't just a soldier, I was an avenger. And I was going to follow Holly's orders to the letter. Friday, 09:45 a.m. I arrived at Keller's D.C. office. The conference room overlooked the U.S. Capitol building, a fitting backdrop of law and power. I was in my full-dress uniform, the one from my promotion. I wanted them to see the woman they mocked. Diane and Eleanor were already seated in the corner, my reinforcement. Eleanor gave me a nod, her eyes full of steel. At 10:05 a.m., Travis and Stella burst in, 5 minutes late, smelling of expensive coffee and self-importance. Sorry, traffic was hell, Travis said, glancing at my uniform with clear disdain. What's with the costume, Aubrey? Playing soldier today? Let's make this quick, Margaret, Stella said, tapping her $5,000 handbag. As Travis said, he has a lunch meeting. Margaret Keller, cold and imposing as a military judge, simply motioned to the chairs. Please, sit. She waited until they were settled. The room went silent. I will now read the last will and testament of Holly Walsh, Margaret began, her voice cutting through the tension. Executed and notarized 2 months ago on... She listed the date, 2 days after her final diagnosis. She read through the preliminary legal language. Travis was already visibly checking his watch. First, Margaret continued, to her dear friends, Diane Matthews and Eleanor Bishop, Mrs. Walsh leaves a bequest of $25,000 each in gratitude for their loyalty and friendship. Travis scoffed. 25? She didn't have $50,000. Stella shot him a look, her eyes narrowing. Margaret ignored them. And now, for the final distribution of the estate. Travis leaned forward, trying to look bored. Stella sat up, her mask of indifference slipping. This was the moment they had come for. Margaret looked down at the paper, then over her glasses, first at Travis, then at Stella. To my son, Travis Walsh, she read, her voice flat, I leave the sum of $1. The silence in the room was absolute. Stella let out a high, nervous laugh. What? Is that a joke? Travis's smug finance bro smile was frozen on his face. Margaret turned the page. And to my daughter, Stella Walsh, I leave the sum of $1. Stella's laugh died in her throat. What? What did you say? Travis's face was changing. The smugness drained away, replaced by an ugly red creeping up his neck from under his expensive shirt collar. What about the rest? He said, his voice low. The rest? Margaret asked as if confused, looking back at the will. Ah, yes, the remainder. To my son and daughter, I leave this with my deepest gratitude for teaching me the true value of self-reliance. She looked up. That is the conclusion of their inheritance. The rest? Stella shrieked, her voice cracking. The money, the accounts, the house, where is the rest? Margaret Keller's voice was as cold as ice. The rest, as you call it, which includes all bank accounts, investment funds, stocks, bonds, insurance policies, and the real estate property at 47 Willow Lane, totaling an estimated value of $1,950,000. Stella was vibrating, her eyes wide. Yes? Yes? Is left in its entirety to my daughter-in-law, Sergeant Aubrey Spears. The words hit the room like a bomb. For 1 second, there was pure, stunned silence. Then came the explosion. What? Travis roared, his voice no longer smooth, but a guttural, animalistic bellow. He shot up from his chair, his face a mask of purple rage. $1 million. She... What? You bitch! Stella screamed, lunging to her feet, her perfectly made-up face twisted into something ugly. You thief! What did you do to her? You poisoned her against us. You manipulated her. Travis was pointing a shaking finger at me. She... We will sue. You can't do this. She was sick. She was an old woman. You manipulated her. He turned his rage on me, his eyes wild. You're a deserter. A goddamn soldier who robbed my mother. We'll see you in court. You'll never get a penny. He was panting, spittle flying from his mouth. He wasn't crying for his mother. He was crying for the money. I just sat there. I didn't flinch. Margaret Keller, however, looked bored. She let the screaming echo for a moment, and then she let a cold, thin smile touch her lips. I anticipated this, she said quietly. She pressed a small button on her desk console. A large screen descended from the ceiling, covering the view of the Capitol. What is this? More of your tricks? Travis spat. Holly, Margaret said, was a strategist. She knew her children. When she signed this will, she also requested a full psychiatric evaluation, which found her to be of exceptionally sound mind and under no duress. And she left a video message. The screen flickered to life. It was Holly. She was in her hospital bed, the one I had sat beside for 72 hours. She was thin, pale, but her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and burning with a cold fire. She looked directly into the camera. "Travis, Stella," she said, her voice weak but clear. "If you're watching this, it means you came, just as I predicted." A small, bitter smile touched her lips. "Money is the only thing that could ever summon you, isn't it? The only thing that ever mattered." Stella let out a small, strangled sob. "I am dying," Holly continued. "And as I lie here, I am surrounded by no one. My son is at a fundraiser. My daughter is worried about her nail appointments. But I am not alone. There is one person who has been here. One person who has held my hand, who has shown me dignity, who has understood the meaning of the word honor." She looked for a moment just past the camera. I knew in that moment she was looking at me, standing in the corner of her hospital room while she recorded this. "Aubrey was here," Holly said, her voice full of a sudden, terrible strength. "You were not." She turned back to the camera. "In the end, you get what you deserve. This is my last lesson to you. As you sow, so shall you reap. Goodbye." The screen went black. Travis and Stella were gone. They were just empty shells, standing in a DC office, their faces white with shock. They had been, in every sense, completely and totally outmaneuvered. The room was silent. I stood up. I straightened my uniform jacket. I looked directly at Stella. "I'll be taking that necklace now, Stella," I said. The rules of engagement were clear. Let them beg, turn, and walk away. But Travis's final threat, "We will sue," changed the theater of operations. This was no longer just about executing a will. It was about defending it. And to defend it, I had to go back. I needed my personal effects from the Old Town house, specifically my service records, my dress uniforms, and my medals. I was not going to let Travis hold my career hostage. I drove to the house I had shared with him for 15 years. I didn't feel sadness. I felt tactical. I was entering hostile territory to retrieve assets. The moment I unlocked the door, the smell hit me. It reeked of stale air and expensive whiskey. The living room was dark, curtains drawn. Travis was there, slouched on the leather sofa, a near-empty bottle of Macallan 18 on the coffee table beside him. He looked up as I entered, his eyes bloodshot and filled with a manic energy. "There she is," he slurred, lurching to his feet. "The conquering hero. The thief." I ignored him and walked toward the stairs. "I'm here for my things, Travis." "Your things?" He lunged, not at me, but into my path, blocking me. He was smart enough not to touch me. He knew my training. He would use words as his weapons. "You have no things here," he screamed, his voice cracking. 15 years. 15 years I gave you this life, this beautiful house, a name. And how do you repay me? You wait until my mother is sick, you poison her mind, and you steal my family's inheritance. I stood my ground, my face impassive. I kept my military duffel bag slung over one shoulder. "I didn't steal anything, Travis. I'm executing your mother's final orders. Now, move." My calmness only enraged him more. He was losing control, and it terrified him. "Orders?" He laughed, a wild, high-pitched sound that wasn't a laugh at all. "You think you're in the army now? You're just a pathetic little soldier playing war, and you're too stupid to see what really happened." He leaned in, his breath hot with alcohol. "You want to know the truth? You want to know what my mother really thought of you?" I didn't answer. I just stared at him, my eyes level. "She couldn't stand you," he hissed, spitting the words at me. "She told me. She said she couldn't stand your rigidity. Your Roger that, ma'am, like a robot." I froze. He saw it. He saw the flicker of pain, and he jammed the knife in deeper. "She didn't even like you," he whispered, each word a venomous dart. "She just hated me and Stella more. She used you, Aubrey. She used you as a tool to punish us. And you? You were just stupid enough to think you'd finally earned her love. You weren't family. You were just a weapon. The words hit me harder than any physical blow. It was my deepest fear, my greatest insecurity, that for all my service, all my loyalty, I wasn't a person. I was just a tool. All the doubt I'd ever felt, the Thanksgiving humiliation, the empty chair at my promotion, it all came rushing back, confirming his words. For a second, I couldn't breathe. And in that second, he smiled. He thought he had won. He thought he had broken me. But as I looked at him, this weak, pathetic man, crying over money he didn't earn, trying to destroy my self-worth to make himself feel powerful, I saw the truth. I saw the coward. And then, I remembered Holly's face in that video. Aubrey was here, you were not. I remembered the warmth of Diane and Eleanor, the family that had brought me soup while my husband froze my bank account. I remembered Holly's final order: turn and walk away. The doubt vanished. The pain was replaced by something else, something cold and hard and strong. My posture changed. I didn't just stand up, I stood straight. I pulled my shoulders back. I wasn't his wife anymore. I was Sergeant Aubrey Spears. I looked him dead in the eye. Maybe she did use me, Travis, I said, my voice quiet but carrying the full weight of command. But she was a brilliant strategist, and she chose the right tool. I took a step forward, and he instinctively took a step back. Because unlike you, I continued, I complete the mission. He had nothing to say. His weapon had failed. If you have ever had someone try to twist the truth just to tear you down, please support this story by hitting that like button. And let me know in the comments if you believe honor is always stronger than lies. I walked past him, up the stairs, and into the master bedroom. I methodically packed my duffel bag with only what was mine: my service medals, my records, my toiletries. I left the jewelry he had given me. I left the pictures. I left the life. I walked back down the stairs. He was still standing there, looking lost, the rage replaced by a hollow confusion. I paused at the front door. I'll be sending someone for my uniforms and my furniture from the study, I said, not looking at him. You can keep the rest. You can keep this house. You can keep the life you thought you had. I walked out of that house and I did not look back. I got into my car and sat there for a full minute, the keys in the ignition. My hands were shaking. But I wasn't scared. I wasn't sad. I was angry. It was a pure, cold rage. A rage that burned away 15 years of lies and disrespect. The marriage was over. The vow of silence I had kept for so long, swallowing the insults, the dismissals, the humiliations. That vow was broken. Travis's words about Holly using me, they echoed in my head. Maybe they were true. Maybe they weren't. I realized sitting there in the cold car that it didn't matter. It didn't matter if Holly liked me, or loved me, or used me. What mattered was that she trusted me. She trusted me to execute her mission. She trusted me to see that justice was done, and I would not fail her. The gaslighting was over. The war had begun. I picked up my phone. It rang twice. Keller. It's me, Sergeant Spears, I said, my voice steady and cold. I hear you, Sergeant. Travis said his mother used me. Maybe she did, I said. But now I'm using what she gave me. Prepare the divorce papers, immediately. There was a half-second of silence on the other end. And Keller? Yes, Sergeant. We fight. The call with Keller ended. The declaration, we fight, hung in the air. This was no longer just a personal defense. It was a counteroffensive. I didn't go back to Fort Belvoir. I drove directly to 47 Willow Lane. The charming cottage, Holly's safe haven, now became my forward command post. My first order of business, as any logistics officer knows, is to do a full inventory of available assets. I began to systematize the intelligence Holly had left behind. Her entire life was meticulously documented, not just in photo albums, but in 5 years' worth of handwritten journals, bound in dark green leather. My logistics training kicked in. I started sorting them by date, cross-referencing entries, looking for patterns. I was no longer a grieving daughter-in-law. I was an analyst building a case. I read about Holly's quiet loneliness, her observations, her pain. And then I found it. The entry that solidified my resolve. December the 25th, 2023, Christmas Day. I read the entry, my heart growing heavier with every looping, elegant word from Holly's pen. Christmas. The apartment is so quiet. Travis and Stella are in Aspen. They sent an e-card. It played a little song. I made a turkey, just a small one, but it feels foolish to eat it alone. The silence is deafening. I miss Ben. I had to pause, my throat tightening. I remembered that Christmas. I was on a short-term deployment in Germany, coordinating a supply movement. I kept reading. A bright spot. Aubrey called. She's on duty somewhere in Germany, but she called. It was 3 a.m. her time. She sounded tired, but she called just to wish me a Merry Christmas. She said she was on watch. I suppose I am too. We are two soldiers, keeping watch alone. Tears pricked my eyes. She had seen me. She had always seen me. Just as I was absorbing the weight of her loneliness, my phone buzzed violently on the desk. A series of rapid-fire notifications. It was Diane, Holly's friend. Aubrey, call me. No, just go on Facebook. Right now. Oh, those horrible children. My blood ran cold. I opened the app, and there it was. Stella had launched her attack. She had tagged me, so it was all over my feed, visible to the entire Alexandria community. To my friends, to my fellow soldiers. It was a post with two pictures, side by side. On the left, a photo from my wedding day, Travis and me, smiling, cutting the cake. On the right, my official army portrait, me in my dress uniform, stoic and proud. The caption Stella wrote was a masterpiece of venom. My heart is shattered, she wrote. I am heartbroken to announce that this woman, my sister-in-law, Sergeant Aubrey Spears, used my mother's dying days to manipulate her. She preyed on a sick, elderly woman, isolated her from her loving family, and stole our entire inheritance. This is a fox in the henhouse, a wolf in sheep's clothing. This is not honor. This is a disgrace to the uniform. The comments were already pouring in. Friends of Stella's, people from the Old Town community who only knew our perfect-looking life. Monstrous. How could she? Disgusting. I hope you're suing her for every penny, Stella. My face was hot. My hands were shaking. This wasn't just an attack on me, it was an attack on my honor. She had used my uniform. She was using the very thing Holly and I respected most as a weapon against me. I immediately called Margaret Keller. I was furious, my voice shaking. She's on Facebook. She's lying. She's posting pictures of my uniform. She's calling me a disgrace. Good. Margaret's voice was perfectly calm, almost cheerful. Good? What do you mean good? She's slandering me. Sergeant, Keller said, her voice dropping into that commanding officer tone. Let them scream. Let them post. Let them drain all their ammunition in public while we are, as you would say, improving our position. They are emotional. We are strategic. Every post they make, every lie they tell, only makes our counterattack more effective. She paused. Now, I have a new order for you. Go back to that house. 47 Willow Lane. I'm here now, I said. Good. Go to Holly's study. In the back of the closet, under the floorboards, there's an old wooden trunk. Not the leather ones, the old, beat-up one. Find it. I did as I was told. I found the trunk, just as she described. It was heavy. I pulled it out, my heart pounding. What's in it, Keller? I asked, my hand on the latch. That, she said, is Holly's real arsenal. After your father-in-law, Ben, passed away, Holly knew what her children were. She knew this day would come. She started documenting everything. I opened the lid. It wasn't full of letters or jewelry. It was full of dozens of small black digital audio recorders and stacks of USB drives, all meticulously labeled. What are these? I whispered. That, Sergeant, Margaret Keller said, and I could hear the smile in her voice, is the truth. Holly recorded every phone call, every conversation where they asked for money, every holiday they abandoned her, every time they insulted you, everything. My hands were shaking as I sifted through them. I saw labels. Thanksgiving 2022, Stella, new car, Travis, investment. And then I saw it. The one that matched the diary, labeled Christmas 2023. I picked it up. I found the Christmas one, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Listen to it, Sergeant, Keller ordered softly. Listen to your ammunition. I pressed the play button. The small speaker crackled. First, Holly's voice, hesitant, hopeful. Are you coming home, Travis? For Christmas? Then Travis's voice, distant, annoyed. I could hear music in the background, like a party at a ski lodge. Mom, I told you, we're in Aspen. Why are you making this difficult? Holly. I don't want to be alone. On Christmas. There was a long, exasperated sigh from Travis, and then, the words that stopped my heart. Then call Aubrey, he said, his voice dripping with condescending pity. She's got no one anyway. Look, I gotta go, roaming charges. Click. I sat there, on the floor of Holly's secret command post, in stunned silence. He had told her to call me. He had used my own loneliness as a solution for his abandonment of her. And in that moment, I knew. Travis's final gaslighting attempt in the living room, she didn't even like you, she just used you, was a lie. He knew it was a lie. This recording wasn't just evidence, it was the verdict. It was the silver bullet, and I was going to deliver it myself. The day of the hearing arrived. The battleground was the Fairfax County Courthouse, a stark modern building in Virginia that smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. Travis and Stella had officially filed a petition to contest the will, claiming undue influence and lack of testamentary capacity. We were all there. Me, in my civilian suit, feeling more exposed than I ever had in uniform. Margaret Keller, looking like a four-star general in her sharp, dark blue suit. And in the first row, right behind me, sat Diane and Eleanor, my chosen family, hands clasped in their laps. Travis and Stella entered with their lawyer. He was a slick man in an expensive-looking suit, the kind of man who smiled with his teeth, but not his eyes. Stella was dressed in black, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, a perfect portrait of manufactured grief. Travis just stared at me, his face a mask of pure, unfiltered hatred. All rise, the bailiff called. The judge entered, a no-nonsense woman in her late 60s. Stella's lawyer began first, his voice dripping with false sympathy. Your Honor, my clients, Travis and Stella Walsh, are the victims here. He painted a tragic picture. Their beloved mother, Holly Walsh, in her final, frail days, was subjected to systematic isolation and psychological manipulation. The defendant, he said, pointing at me, Sergeant Aubrey Spears, is a military officer trained in psychological warfare. She used these skills to prey on a weak, ailing woman, turning her against her own family, forcing her to change a will that had stood for 20 years. I watched, disgusted, as Stella let out a perfectly timed, delicate sob. We are here to seek justice for Holly, the lawyer concluded, and to restore the rightful legacy to her grieving children. The judge looked at him, her face impassive. Call your first witness. We call Travis Walsh to the stand. Travis walked up, swore on the Bible, and sat down. His slick lawyer led him through the script. Mr. Walsh, what was your relationship with your mother like? It was wonderful, Travis lied, his voice smooth and practiced. We were incredibly close. I called her every day. I loved her very much. I could feel Eleanor stiffen behind me. And what did you observe about the defendant's behavior in those final months? Aubrey changed, Travis said, shaking his head sadly. She started blocking our access to Mom. She'd say Mom was too tired for a call or sleeping when we wanted to visit. We tried, Your Honor. God, we tried. But she wouldn't let us in. Now I understand why. He looked at me, his eyes full of fake sorrow. She was poisoning my mother's mind against us. I sat perfectly still, my hands clasped in my lap, I was a soldier in a storm. I did not flinch. I just waited. Diane and Eleanor were muttering prayers behind me. The lawyer sat down. Your witness, Ms. Keller. Margaret Keller stood up, walked slowly to the lectern, and placed a single file on it. Mr. Walsh, she began, her voice crisp and cold. You said you were incredibly close with your mother. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. And you called her every day? Yes. Or as often as I could. I'm a very busy man. I'm sure, Keller said. She turned to me. Your Honor, I would like to call my client, Sergeant Aubrey Spears, to the stand. I took the stand, swore the oath. Keller's questions were like surgical strikes. Sergeant Spears, in the final 72 hours of Holly Walsh's life, while you were at her bedside, how many times did you attempt to contact Mr. Travis Walsh? 14 times, ma'am, I said, my voice clear and steady. And did he answer? No, ma'am, not 13 of those times. He answered on the 14th call. And what was the nature of that 14th call? Did he ask about his mother? No, ma'am. He asked me if I could pick up his dry cleaning on my way home for a fundraiser he was attending that evening. A shocked murmur rippled through the courtroom. Travis's face flushed. The judge's eyes narrowed just slightly. Thank you, Sergeant. Please step down. I returned to my seat. Your Honor, Keller continued, the petitioners claim my client used undue influence to poison Holly Walsh's mind. We have evidence that proves the exact opposite, that it was the petitioners themselves who abandoned their mother, and that Holly Walsh was in full command of her faculties and fully aware of her children's character. Stella's lawyer shot up. Objection, speculation. Overruled, the judge said. I'll allow it. Proceed, Ms. Keller. Your Honor, Keller said, we have in our possession several digital audio recordings made by Holly Walsh herself, documenting her relationship with her children. The lawyer was on his feet again. Objection, illegal recordings, invasion of privacy. Holly Walsh recorded these conversations in her own home, where she had a reasonable expectation of privacy. She was a party to the conversation. It is admissible, Your Honor, Keller stated flatly. The judge looked at the slick lawyer. Sit down, counselor. I want to hear these. Margaret Keller pressed a button on a small laptop-connected device. The courtroom was dead silent. The first recording crackled to life. It was the Aspen call. Holly's voice, hesitant. Are you coming home, Travis, for Christmas? Travis's voice, distant, annoyed. Mom, I told you, we're in Aspen. Why are you making this difficult? Holly's voice, smaller now. I don't want to be alone, on Christmas. And then, Travis's reply, dripping with condescending pity. Then call Aubrey, she's got no one anyway. Look, I gotta go, roaming charges. Click. I stared straight ahead. I could feel Travis's eyes on me, but I didn't look. The judge's face was unreadable, but she motioned for Keller to continue. Next recording, Keller said. A call from Ms. Stella Walsh. Stella's voice, impatient. Mom, I'm serious. I need the $5,000 by Friday, or I'm going to lose the deposit on the beach house. Just sell that stock I told you about. Holly. Stella, dear, that's for emergencies. Stella. This is an emergency. Don't you want me to be happy? Click. Stella sank in her chair. And one final recording, Your Honor, Keller said, from Mr. Travis Walsh regarding my client. Travis's voice, angry. Mom, why do you even talk to her? Aubrey is a mistake. She's just a little soldier. You should get rid of her. She's not real family. Click. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Travis's face was sheet white. He looked like he was going to be sick. Stella burst into tears, and this time, they were real. The judge looked down from her bench, her eyes resting on Travis and Stella. Her voice was cold. Do either of you, or your counsel, have anything else to say? Travis opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The slick lawyer just slowly sat down, shuffling his papers. The judge stared at them for a long, painful moment. Then she lifted her gavel. Crack! This petition is not just baseless. It is an insult to the memory of Holly Walsh. Case dismissed. The gavel cracked again, and the sound echoed like a rifle shot. It was over. The judge's gavel strike, case dismissed, was the gunshot that ended the war. The silence that followed was heavy, absolute. Travis and Stella were frozen, their faces pale and slack-jawed. Margaret Keller slowly, deliberately, gathered her files, nodded once to the judge, and then to me. We stood. Diane and Eleanor rushed over, wrapping me in shaky hugs, whispering, "You did it, child. You did it." We walked out of the Fairfax County Courthouse without a single look back. The news of the verdict, and more importantly, the audio recordings, spread through the tight-knit circles of Old Town Alexandria like a wildfire. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Stella, whose entire career was based on social reputation, was fired from her high-profile event planning company. The public scandal of her screaming, "I need 5,000," at her dying mother was toxic. Her clients, the wealthy wives of DC politicians and lobbyists, dropped her. Travis's downfall was quieter, but just as devastating. His world, the finance bro world, runs on a fragile, unspoken code of trust and appearances. The story of the man who left his mother to die alone, who skipped her last hours for a fundraiser, and who then lied about it in court, made him a pariah. His partners at the firm looked at him differently. Clients became unavailable. They had lost the inheritance, but in their attempt to get it, they had lost everything else: their reputations, their social standing, and their careers. They had nothing left but each other. I, on the other hand, was at 47 Willow Lane. I spent the next few days in a state of quiet exhaustion. I began to truly clean the house, to sort through Holly's things, to polish the wood and air out the rooms. The relief was immense, but it was heavy. The war was over. I had won. But the price was my 15-year marriage. The life I had known was gone, reduced to ash. A few days later, I needed to restock the kitchen. I drove into Old Town, to the Whole Foods on Duke Street, the same one Travis and I used to shop at, pretending to be the perfect, happy couple. I was in the coffee aisle, trying to decide between two brands of fair trade espresso beans, when I heard the shriek. "Thief!" I froze. The sound was guttural, raw, and full of hate. I turned. Stella was standing at the end of the aisle. She looked terrible. She was no longer the polished, perfectly manicured Old Town socialite. Her hair was matted and greasy, her eyes were wild and bloodshot, and she was wearing stained sweatpants. "You!" she screamed, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You dare to show your face here?" The entire grocery store went silent. Every shopper, every employee stopped. And then, as if on cue, the phones came out. People started filming. "You're the bitch who stole my mother's money," she shrieked, taking a step toward me. "You're a thief in a soldier's uniform." My military training kicked in. My body went cold. I did not move. I did not retreat. I stood my ground. "Stella," I said, my voice low and steady, "you're causing a disturbance. Go home." "My home! You took my home. You took everything. You ruined my life." She lunged at me, her hand raised, nails out, aiming to slap me. My training took over. It was a reflex. I didn't even think. I caught her wrist mid-air. A quick, clean, precise motion. My grip was like steel. Her eyes widened, shocked at the sudden stop. I held her wrist, my voice never rising above a firm command. "Go home, Stella. It's over. You lost." We stood there for a second, locked in this tableau, me in my calm, controlled stance, her a snarling, unraveling mess. Security guards were running toward us from the front of the store. I released her wrist, pushing it away from me. I turned back to my shopping cart, calmly placed the coffee in it, and began to push it down the aisle, my back straight. I left her there, screaming and sobbing as the security guards surrounded her. I didn't look back. That night, the other front of the war collapsed. I was at Holly's desk, looking over the divorce papers Margaret Keller had already drawn up when my phone buzzed. A new voicemail. From Travis. I pressed play. It wasn't a roar of anger this time. It was the pathetic, slurring sound of a drunk man weeping. Sob. Aubrey. Obs, please. I'm an idiot. I know. I'm so sorry. I messed up so bad. I'm an idiot. I listened, my face impassive. Stella's crazy. She's lost it. And my partners. They're pushing me out. I'm losing my job, Aubrey. I'm losing everything. You can't do this to me. That was my mother, I know. But you're my wife. You're still my wife. I have nothing left. He descended into incoherent sobbing. Aubrey, please, don't leave me. I listened to the entire pitiful message. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel sadness. I didn't feel pity. I just felt tired. I remembered Holly's rules of engagement, her final order. Let them beg. And when they do, smile, turn, and walk away. I sat there at Holly's desk. I picked up the pen. I looked at the divorce papers. I didn't smile. I just felt a cold, quiet peace. I signed my name, firmly, Sergeant Aubrey Spears. Then I picked up my phone. I deleted Travis's voicemail. I blocked his number. I blocked Stella's number. I composed a new email. It was to Stella's lawyer. I attached a digital copy of Holly's revised will and a single audio file, Holly's Rules of Engagement. The subject line was, "For your records." I sent it. I shut down all channels. I cut all ties. The mission was complete. I had turned and I had walked away. This mission was complete. But a new mission was just beginning. With the divorce papers signed and the opposition cut off, the initial chaos settled into a cold, quiet peace. I had a significant estate, investment funds, and cash, nearly $2 million, all secured under my name. I was financially free. I could have resigned my commission immediately, bought a beachfront condo in Florida, and started an early retirement, but that felt cheap. It felt like a Travis move. Holly's legacy was not about the money. It was a final, profound mission statement. I called Diane and Eleanor. They came immediately, bringing not chicken soup this time, but architectural sketches and notebooks filled with ideas. Holly wanted this little cottage to be what she never had, I told them, standing in the cozy living room of 47 Willow Lane. A place of safety, honor, and true community. A haven, Eleanor whispered, her eyes shining. Exactly, I affirmed. We're going to use this house and Holly's funds to build something real. Not just for us, but for people like Holly, the soldiers left behind on the home front. We officially established Holly's Haven, a nonprofit community center. Its mission was twofold: to offer free legal and emotional support to military widows and families navigating complex, often toxic, inheritances, and to provide a place of belonging for elderly individuals who had been emotionally abandoned by their own children. It became my new command post. I spent months working with Margaret Keller to structure the foundation legally. Diane, a retired horticulturalist, designed a gorgeous community garden. Eleanor, the military widow, volunteered to run the support group for others like herself. One afternoon, while sorting through Holly's personal journals for insurance documents, I came across a small, aged envelope tucked deep inside. It was sealed with a plain sticker, and on the front, Holly had simply written, "For Aubrey. When the war is over." I sat down at the desk. My heart felt fragile. This was the last piece of intelligence. I opened the envelope. It wasn't a tactical brief or a bitter instruction. It was a single, handwritten letter. Holly's elegant, sharp script filled the page. "My dearest daughter-in-law, Aubrey." I froze on the word daughter-in-law. After all the bitterness, after the divorce, that word carried a weight I hadn't expected. If you are reading this, it means you completed the mission. Do not let Travis's words wound you. He told you I didn't like you. A coward's lie born of his own desperation. I did not like you, Aubrey. I admired you. You were the only person in my life who kept a promise. The only one who valued duty and respect over convenience and money. You showed up. You stayed at your post. Thank you for showing me what true honor looks like. Do not live in my war, my dear. Use what I left you to build your own peace. My love to you, my daughter. Holly. I placed the letter on the desk, and I cried. It wasn't the sharp, cold, disciplined weeping of the hospital room. It was a deep, freeing sob that purged 15 years of doubt, of being told I wasn't enough, wasn't feminine enough, wasn't rich enough, wasn't real. Travis's cruelest psychological weapon was diffused by Holly's final act of faith. I cried for Holly, who was finally at peace. And I cried for the sergeant, who finally had permission to be Aubrey. It was the first time I had truly cried since Holly passed. A year later, Holly's Haven held its opening ceremony. It was a beautiful, sunny Virginia afternoon. The little cottage, once Holly's secret safe house, glowed with new purpose. The community garden was already bursting with late summer tomatoes and herbs. Inside, the free legal clinic was open, and the kitchen was warm, perpetually smelling of Diane's famous chicken soup. I stood on the newly built porch, wearing a sharp, tailored civilian dress. No uniform, but I had never felt more like a leader. Legacy, I said, addressing the small crowd of veterans' families, abandoned seniors, and friends. Legacy isn't what you leave behind in bank accounts, but what you build with the values you stood for. I looked at Diane and Eleanor, standing beside me. My chosen family. Holly Walsh left us a blueprint for justice. Today we build that justice into a home of hope. Holly is not gone. Her mission and her honor lives here now. The story ends on a quiet evening, 6 months later. I had officially retired from the Army, turning in my uniform with a deep sense of accomplishment. I still worked at Holly's Haven every day, but I was no longer defined by rank. I was simply Aubrey. I was sitting on the Haven's porch swing, drinking a cup of tea. I looked up at the twilight sky over the rolling hills of Virginia. The air was cool and smelled of fresh-cut grass and lavender. I had traded the chaos of command for the quiet grace of service. I had traded a loveless marriage for a community built on loyalty and respect. I had traded Holly's war for my own peace. I looked up at the stars, the same silent, ancient stars that had watched me stand guard in the hospital room. The final watch was done. I had executed the last order, and I was finally, truly free.